Hey, gamer friends, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Josiah.
And we are ready to roll.
Today, we're talking about DMing with paper or with digital.
This is our RPG Saturday, and so we brought on a guest. This is Talon.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is my cue to go. See you later.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Long-time watcher since the beginning.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions just to sort of introduce you to the audience and let them know about you a little bit. So how did you get into D&D?
So my dad used to do what he called, he had a group of friends that would come over most of my childhood. They called it like Nasty Pirates Night or Pirates Night or something like that. And they would play Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Okay.
And I grew up, every couple of nights, once every month, if not multiple times a week, that was like the big draw.
Yeah.
And that kind of slowly faded out as campaigns do, but it instilled that sense of camaraderie and that love of like, this is something that brings people together. And anytime adults get to play pretend, it's always a good time.
It's a great time.
Yeah. So I first started DMing in middle school.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Way early.
Yeah.
And it was just paper. I think we had one set of dice between 5 people.
Gotcha.
We had a blast.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was an absolute mess, but I loved it for what it was.
Yeah. Humble D&D.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What campaigns have you done so far?
I have played in quite a few. I kind of got stuck in the forever DM role fairly early on. I definitely loved doing like a Shroud over Saltmarsh, I think was a good one. I did a whole bunch of homebrew high fantasy. I did a homebrew Spelljammer-esque before I think Spelljammer was a thing.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I've done a ton of like Dwarven Kingdoms, one-shot dragon killing, Monster of the Week, stuff like that.
Gotcha. And have you run any D&D modules?
I have not run modules, but I have played in several, including, of course, Curse of Strahd and Dragon Keep and Dragon Lance, I think.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right, and you have some questions for me.
I do. What was your introduction to like online database D&D?
It's obviously very overwhelming.
Yeah.
I haven't utilized D&D Beyond or things like that very much, especially as a DM. I've run only one campaign, and it was Curse of Strahd, which you are a part of. I basically just ran the module and stayed pretty contained within that and only utilized resources as I needed them. All of my experience with that is pinpoint searches. So I didn't go into sort of the database of spells or feats or anything like that and just like say, okay, what can I do here? I haven't really done that. Now as a player I have.
Right.
It's a little bit overwhelming, but I think you go into it as a player, at least I do. I have a preconceived concept for a character that I want to play, right? And so it kind of naturally and organically narrows the field of that information. If you don't at least narrow it down based on your concept of a character or concept of a campaign, I think it just is way too overwhelming.
I agree 100%. Theme is everything.
Yep.
Whether you're DMing, whether you're playing, or whether you're just like, I need to make a funny little NPC.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the more thematic meat on the bone, the more the players will be attracted to and want to play
100%.
with it.
Yeah, it draws them into the game, into the campaign, and into that character. For instance, I had 2 or 3 NPCs that were reoccurring NPCs throughout Curse of Strahd. They had like pretty well-rounded, developed personalities. My players really enjoyed interacting with them. One of them was this tiny little gnome guy who was old and crotchety and slow as all get out, and it was just always kind of a laugh every time they went to the store. I think that's super important.
It is funny that players will grab onto, we'll kill dragons, we'll kill the whole goblin camp, but that goblin that got bullied, he's coming with us.
Yeah.
His name's Brad.
Yeah.
We love him. We're going to keep him. Goblin Carl lives in all of our hearts.
Yes, for sure. Unless you are campaigning with a bunch of murder hobos.
Always a danger. Always.
Yeah. So what is your preferred method, paper or digital?
obviously very humble beginnings for me.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a dry erase board, some shoddy markers that didn't always work, and all the paper we could spend.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was ripping out notebooks for probably schoolwork should have been put in them, but we tore those to pieces, set out battle maps taped together on one side, and drew in pencil. There's a certain level of nostalgia for that.
Yep.
However, I do understand that every time I level up, I don't want to go sift through a book and look through a list of 100 spells.
Yeah.
It is easier to, like you said, thematically pick and choose. And I think online resources can be an absolute boon to that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they should take over the physical interaction of paper on the table.
Okay. And specifically, so are you talking about as a player or as a DM?
For both, actually.
Both, okay.
If I'm a DM and I'm trying to get a monster that I want to be a bit of a mini boss but not overpower, I absolutely would sift through some spells online or look at a thematic section in a book depending on, how rapidly I need to get that out.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that beats, in my opinion, having the monster written down in a way that is easily digestible for me.
Yeah.
Because, I love the way they've got the character stats written out and the way they've got a new setup. Even in the 2025 new edition is pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's, at a glance, I can't read that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just need to read what I need to know.
Yeah.
Or my shorthand.
Yeah. So what about DMing from a laptop versus DMing from paper and books?
I will say the laptop makes adjustments easier.
Yeah.
And note taking far faster.
Yeah.
Every time I've played with somebody who DMs with a laptop or is a note taker with a laptop, it's you've added that, done.
Yeah.
Versus you have this, wait, please, give me time.
Yeah.
But I find when you write things in your own shorthand, you tend to not forget items, or you tend to not forget abilities or features that your character has. And that's some of that flavor that I think gets lost sometimes when you're like, well, I'm just a barbarian, I'll just hit him with my stick. It's like, you have a potion of, something amazing in your pack. Just look, but it gets forgotten.
Yeah.
How smoothly do you transition tech mishaps and problems in the middle of a D&D session?
Probably not as good as I want to.
That's always the case.
Yeah. It did happen a few times. Full disclosure, I started as a paper DM, my Curse of Strahd campaign, and then probably around halfway through, I switched to digital, being everything on my laptop, using Roll20 on a TV. Mm-hmm. There were some tech mishaps, and I would spend a few minutes trying to fix it. Just telling my players, sorry, give me a second, let me see if I can fix this real quick. But if it went any longer than 5 minutes or so, maybe 10 minutes at the most, I would just pivot to either theater of the mind or drawing on some paper or something like that. So I tried not to let it bog down the game is the whole point of it.
And do you think it was more teething problems, like getting the transition from paper to electronic, that kind of caused the majority of those?
No, I would say most of them were app related, like Roll20 related, or maybe my internet or something to that effect. Most of the time it wasn't the transition. I think that happened fairly smoothly.
Nice.
So let's talk about some of the pros and cons. We've touched on a few of them, but I want to really dive into what are the pros and cons of paper only DMing versus digital only DMing.
I mean, the obvious one is paper only DMing. If you lose it, it's gone.
Yeah.
It is gone. If you didn't bring it, if for whatever reason a fire happens, water, coffee stains, it's gone.
Yeah.
Definitely something to be wary of. I find that I call it chaotic organization, where I've got it kind of the way I need it, and then I've got folders of stuff that correspond back to that, and it's just pick and grab what I need for the moment, and then I can build from there.
Yeah.
But I find I can't really do that chaotic organization on something like Roll20, where it wants a more rigid
organization.
Style.
Yeah, gotcha. And so in your campaign that you're running right now, are you using paper or digital?
I'm using solely paper.
Solely paper.
And I have devised, I keep initiative track on paper. I've got a handmade DM screen, and I've got everybody's players written out on the front with their name. and then I've got some spares for, bad guy number 4.
Yeah.
But on the DM side, I hang them on my DM screen, and on the DM side, I have their AC, their max HP, and like usually I have vestiges in my game, which are just very powerful magic items. And I have briefly what that does.
Gotcha. For initiative order and for just information.
Yeah, and then I have it set up in the initiative order on from left to right, so my players can absolutely see what order they're in, who's on deck, what position's happening, and when a monster dies, you just simply remove it.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I would say that for me, the pros of paper are, as a DM, when you are writing everything down, you remember it better.
Yeah.
You just do. There's something about physically writing down the information that you need that locks it in your brain better. I definitely noticed that when I went from paper to digital, I was relying on the internet and my digital notes a lot more often. So I would say that's a definite pro for paper. A pro for digital is it's really fast.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, at the touch of your finger, you have every piece of D&D information you could ever want.
And every piece of inspiration.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, those are some of the pros and cons that I can think of.
The cons for electronic, especially long distance electronic, is that like buffer gap or
I hate
slow internet, the wheel of death, blue screens. But that is a problem I think that's happening, but it's already overcoming paper's biggest problem, which is scheduling conflicts.
Right.
Which is already like the murder of most campaigns.
Yeah, it really is.
Another thing I think paper has going for it is, like you said, when you write it down, it is ingrained for you.
Yeah.
And I think it invests players more when they have to write down stuff.
Yeah.
And there is something a lot more tragic when you have to erase the health down to 0.
Yeah.
It hits them harder.
It does.
I've seen a group of 4 full-grown men that were laughing and joking and passing around, fruit punch and lemonade, and then one of them died, and all of a sudden the room went quiet, and they were like brought to tears.
Yeah.
It's amazing what it can do.
Yeah, you feel it more for sure. Yeah, that's good.
Like you kind of touched on, electronic has a lot more creative outlet for you to draw upon.
Yeah.
And it seems to never end. You can plan, replan, you can shift a lot faster than by paper. Whereas paper, I'm kind of set in stone to what I have prepped.
Right.
If we go further than my prep, we have to stop here, guys. I'm sorry.
That's right.
But electronic, you're like, actually, I can Google this or flip to the next section and get a kind of vibe for it.
Yeah, get something that sparks your creativity forward. Yep.
What sets D&D apart from other TTRPGs because it is paper-based?
Full disclosure, I've never played another TTRPG besides D&D. So I don't know if I am a good candidate for this. Maybe you can talk to it more. I would say that for me, D&D being paper-based, it feels more organic, I guess, in a way, or I don't want to say real because it's obviously we're pretending, right? But it has more gravity, it feels to me like, when you have books and paper. And that's, I think, the way D&D was obviously meant to be played.
Yeah.
And so we've obviously adapted it to a digital world.
Limitless paper in a paperless world.
As technology has grown, but it was designed as a paper and book game.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
When I started, it was really only paper.
Yeah.
In like the early 2000s. I mean, there was maybe a couple of sites or sources that were there, but I've gotten to see this like, well, paper is good, but technology rose and we all backed it and loved it so much. And now there's almost like a resurgence of paper think, coming back. I think it's really a pick and choose because the paper is kind of, as you said, an artifact of its time.
Yeah.
It was made in the 70s. It's definitely a big part of that. And it just wasn't available at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say also the books that are created for D&D, I feel like they bring you more into the world. They unlock, for me at least, more creativity inside of the world because it's, I don't know, maybe because it's physically in my hand, instead of on a screen. I also have really enjoyed DMing from a laptop and having the world's information at my fingertips during a game. So I don't know. There's definitely good and bad for both.
I definitely think a lot of other TTRPGs are based in paper, but they play a lot more in theater of the mind.
Yeah.
Whereas D&D was definitely like, we want combat, we want a little bit of this, and a good blend of it, I think, as well. A lot of other TTRPGs are kind of like you roll to hit, you've taken a wound, you've got 4 wounds.
Right.
Whereas D&D is a little bit crunchier.
Yeah.
And it allows, I think, for a little bit more freedom in that.
What would you recommend for a new DM? Paper or like strictly digital?
I would say actually a blend of both.
Oh, okay.
I would say to start off, have the information of the world at your fingertips just in case you need it, because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
And then have your own private personal notes of, story beats you want to hit, interactions between characters and NPCs, or cool ideas. And there's nothing wrong with discussing with your players kind of ahead of time what they should be expecting, paper or electronic.
Yeah, and if you're going through a module, I think you should have the module, the book.
100%.
If you're homebrewing, I think you should write out a lot of what you are going to do. So yeah, I think that's good advice. I would say using online as a resource is really good as a first time DM, but mainly doing it in book paper form I think is really beneficial.
Yeah.
For me it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, a quick access guide as opposed to like these are my notes.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. A big thing in all of my games is engagement and tone.
Okay.
And I find electronic sound is massive.
Oh.
Obviously, I can't put us all in a dungeon and have us sit at a table and play. So I had to recreate that with, a speaker. Maybe it's under the table behind me,
right?
A TV, anything. And it's amazing the transition that you can get with that. And I think paper you can't get that.
Yes, I would 100% agree with this. I think this is where digital really shines, is bringing players into the immersion of the game with like you said, music, like ambient music or sounds. Like we've played in my campaign with a TV that had a map on it. I think it really just helps to bring your imagination into this world.
Yeah.
I've even in one of my sessions, you guys were in a magically dark cave. I even turned out all the lights and had just a few candles lit to help bring that environment to the table. And I don't know, I just, along with the sounds and the screen, I thought it was awesome. And I would want that as a player. So I wanted to bring that as a DM to the players.
And the best part is you don't have to have that electronic engagement while you play. You've actually played in one of my campaigns. I supported a Kickstarter called Crooked Moon. I didn't get it in time, so I had to do a homebrew Crooked Moon. But in that, I chose 10 classic horror folk vibe songs.
Yeah.
And I had everybody listen to all of them and pick one.
Yeah.
And it just immediately set the tone for both their character creations for a great one-shot, as well as set the tone of the whole overall campaign immediately.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought that was genius.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. What's the cost difference between the two?
My first minis were bottle caps with paper printed off or drawn on, glued to it, moving around a checkerboard.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So the cost of entry physically is the limit of your imagination with trash. Literally.
For the more physical paper version of it.
On a mat. You can do amazing things with, I showed you today, kind of like empty dice trays, the things you can just kind of cobble together, as opposed to the monetary investment that you have to make for a TV, for a laptop.
Yeah.
The issues that people may not have a higher end phone or laptop that they can easily or bring with them every time.
This is where physical paper really shines, is that it's really only limited by your creativity to enact what your vision is. And you can do it uber cheap, if not mostly free. You can do theater of the mind
100%
with no cost.
Right.
Yeah. For me, I prefer to have some tangible thing that I interact with as I play. So it's obviously, yes, a very different cost aspect. But I think, like we talked about with the immersion, if you want that, you have to invest a little money to get that. And
I think there's also like a bell curve on that, right?
Yeah.
Where like, if I describe something that's so horrific your mind can't comprehend, and then I show you a picture on Roll20 of a regular little zombie, I've already ruined that immersion for you.
Right.
Because now you just see a zombie. Whereas if we're talking paper, that is the most horrible thing you can imagine, which is going to be way better than any image or AI image that I can find to
Right.
represent that.
And on the reverse side of that, if there's some creature that is really obscure, that isn't, say, commonly known,
Yeah.
being able to show an image of that will help them connect that monster with that
monsters. They're just like, you've explained it, but I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I
It can
agree.
help connect those dots. So I actually used both when I DM'd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I would do a theater of the mind and with just my description. Sometimes I would show an image when I thought it was appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being like, and here's a cool picture in the book that made me decide to do this monster.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Always a good time.
In the 2024 Player's Handbook and what I've seen of the 2025 Monster Manual for D&D, the artwork has been unreal.
I don't know how much money they spent, but it has to be a ton.
Oh, yeah.
All the art is gorgeous. All the like new setups and the art for even just the player characters or stuff has been amazing. I can't imagine
how much they spend.
And I think there's going to be 100 new monsters.
Yep.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah. So if you play D&D and you haven't got those books, the Monster Manual's not out yet, but when they come out, you should definitely get it because they have definitely upped their game in the art department.
Yeah. And the organization department. Anybody who's picked up the 2014 book has been like, oh, cool, werewolves. I want to put a werewolf in the thing. Werewolves are in W.
Right.
Why is there no werewolf? And then you go, you're like, oh, they're in the lycanthropes and the elf.
Right.
I think they've done a fantastic job of reorganizing that and making that more user-friendly.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I think was another kind of pro for the electronic for a long time.
Right.
Because it's like werewolf, I can just Google that and then 10 seconds have that as opposed to flipping through.
Finding it, yeah. And it being in a different section than you thought it was, yeah.
And another thing that's kind of going in that corner is books do get outdated.
Yeah.
Especially with the newer versions coming out. I know I started playing in, I think, 3.5 and was a real push by my players to move to 2014.
Oh, yeah.
And I just drug. And I finally got it. This is pretty good. Okay. Yeah. I should have done this sooner. But it is like a cost. I do have it's that upfront cost for those books.
Yeah, they're not cheap. They're like $60.
Yeah. So this one's a bit of a multi-answer part.
Okay.
Would you prefer paper or electronic for a one-shot, for a two-shot, a short campaign, and a multi-year campaign?
Okay. So I would say for a one-shot, I think actually digital would win here.
Mm-hmm.
The setup for a one-shot would be a lot easier and faster digitally.
Mm-hmm.
The players don't have a lot of investment.
Right.
So they can just show up and you've got everything digitally laid out for them. They come with their character sheets and you go. I mean, I guess in paper, it just, mainly it's, I guess, just for the DM.
Actually, I think it's for both. I agree 100%. I think players who aren't familiar with their character are going to sit there and flip through pages back and forth. What, do I have that thing? No, I've wanted to do this.
Yeah.
What spells do I have? How many spell slots do I have? Whereas, D&D Beyond or electronic will do all that for you.
Yeah, it just plugs it in for you. Yeah, that's a good point. For a two-shot, I would say probably the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's very different. For a mini campaign, now I think you're starting to get into the place where it may make sense to have paper versus digital or some sort of hybrid, like you've said before. When you're talking about a multi-year campaign, then it's, to me, strictly DM preference.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a paper guy, you want to do it paper.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a digital guy, do it digitally. I think that once you're into the multi-year campaigns, it's too much of an investment to say it's better this way or it's better this way.
Yeah.
It's completely up to the DM at that point, I think, whatever they're most comfortable with.
I agree 100%. And there's nothing wrong with being a flexible DM and somebody really loves paper.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as they know that we're going to be using Roll20 or something like that.
Sure.
That's completely up to the discretion of the DM. I think you're right.
So we've touched on it a bit. Do you think a hybrid model is better than either paper or digital?
I do, 100%. Like I said, I was drugged through to the new stuff. So moving from paper to electronic has been a slow roll, but even now I'll use my phone because I can take it anywhere. I can have multiple campaigns all locked and loaded, ready to go, and I don't have to carry around folders full of magic items and this character and that character and what was this person again? We haven't played in 2 months. I can't remember. As opposed to, okay, cool, little lizard guy, he does a bite, he does a shoot, I got it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I think there is a place for hybrid to be the winner here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was as a player,
mm-hmm.
and you did touch on a little bit for a DM, but strictly as a DM, do you still think hybrid wins?
Yeah, I think hybrid wins. I lean a little bit more paper.
Okay.
Just because I like to have my players invested. Usually we'll do like level ups and stuff.
Yeah.
Electronic, because it's just faster, it's easier, the information's there. And then I like having printed out sheets because the players do get more invested, I think.
Yeah, I think that as a DM, hybrid is really intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that it can be, because there's actually even a spectrum of hybrid.
Yeah.
Like you said, like you kind of touched on it, you lean a little bit more paper, but if you maybe I lean a little bit more digital, but I still want to have a little physical interaction with paper or the book. Maybe I have the book and a laptop, and I just maybe reference certain things over here, and I do mostly digital, or I do mostly in the book, and just use this as like a quick reference guide or something like that. So from a DM standpoint for the players, having maybe a TV with Roll20, or maybe even just a map on the TV that's like a 3D interactive map, but all the players have physical character sheets and maybe their own player's handbook next to them or something like that, and minis on the TV. Yeah, I think there's definitely room for a hybrid model here.
100%. And necessity is going to determine what you're actually going to be doing.
Yeah.
If you have a party that's long distance, you're probably going to end up being more electronic.
Yeah.
But nothing says that your player who has to communicate through electronic means can't have paper and pen. I think as much as a cop-out as it is to say, well, everybody wins.
Yeah.
100%. I think there's a happy medium, and it really is not just the DM, but the individual player and DM's perspectives and needs and wants at the moment. My last one we already kind of talked about. I've had a lot of issues with electronic initiative trackers, mainly because I always forget to take somebody out. I'll confuse who it is, and I'll just forget.
Yeah.
I find when I do like paper, I can kind of keep track of, and I have silly little names, like big boy on left, small guy on right, rat in front. I think it's that ingrating who they are into my mind helps me keep track of them better. Do you find that is the way?
I would say that I don't really feel the same way. I did mostly my initiative tracking in Roll20. I actually really enjoyed that. It felt like it took something off my shoulders that I didn't have to manage physically.
Especially as like a newer DM.
Right.
Just another thing you have to worry about and keep track of.
Yeah, because the mental load as a DM is really high. I think a lot of players who haven't DM'd don't really understand that. If you're a player out there and you've never DM'd, give your DM some grace. Because there's a lot to think about and to manage. I prefer digital initiative tracking. Now, I will say, with a caveat of, there are some cool initiative trackers out there that people have made. Trees with flags,
swords with little
banners, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, that may be really cool. I've never tried that before.
I will say I have had one of those swords with banners, and they work really, really well until you hit the end of the banner and you have to flip it over.
Yeah.
Because then all it takes is for one potty break, one snack break, one person to knock it over, and you're like, what was the initiative? Did somebody write that down?
Yeah.
Do we have that anywhere? I understand, especially if you're a newer DM or you're running hordes or you have a lot to keep track of, especially if it's like a boss fight, layer actions, legendary resistances, spells. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, for sure. If you had to DM only with paper or digital, which would you prefer?
I would probably do paper.
Yeah.
I would put in the extra work ahead of time to have the stuff ready with paper.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the digital side. But that's not the only option.
Yeah.
I think I would prefer if I could choose, if I didn't have to choose one of those two, I'm going hybrid.
Yeah, I think as much as my heart wants me to be paper, every day the technology is getting better.
Yeah.
The systems are a little bit easier,
More
and
accessible.
people are becoming more creative with paper.
That's true.
So every day, I think I find myself more and more hybrid.
Well, these are some things that we wanted to talk to you guys about, and I hope that you got something out of it. If you do, please like and subscribe, and tell us down below in the comments, what are your preferences, paper or digital or hybrid? Thanks for watching. Bye.